Hi, I'm Paul Bleazby. This is the story of the Gold Knight and the Silver Knight. Once upon a time, there was a Gold Knight and a Silver Knight. The Gold Knight was clad in all gold. He had armour of gold, he had a sword of gold, he had a shield of gold. Also, there was the Silver Knight. He also had armour too, but his armour was made of silver. He had a silver sword and a silver shield to protect himself. One day the Silver Knight and the Gold Knight were travelling across the country and they saw each other from a distance. As they approached each other, they saw a hill and they approached the hill from either side. The gold one from the left-hand side and the right-hand side was the Silver Knight. And they walked up the hill, spying each other as they walked up the hill. As they got close to the top of the hill, they looked up and they noticed that there was a tree on the hill and there was something shiny hanging from that tree. They got a little bit closer and the Gold Knight spoke out to the Silver Knight. He said, "Silver Knight, do you see that shield on the tree? It's glinting in the sun." And the Silver Knight said, "Yes, I do see that shield. It is a very beautiful shield." And the Gold Knight said, "Yes, it glints like the sun. It's golden and warm like the sun." And the Silver Knight said, "Well, yes, I do see the shield, but I'm sorry, it's not gold, it's silver. It's actually silver and it glints like the silvery moon at night." Anyway, the Gold Knight said, "Well, hang on, this is not true, it's gold." And the Silver Knight says, "Silver." And as they got closer, they continued to argue. And being knights, they did what knights did. They said, "How dare you insult me?" And the Gold Knight pulls out his sword. "I challenge you. It is gold." The Silver Knight says, "No, I challenge you. It is silver." So they fight. And during the fight, the Gold Knight finally gets up and he mortally wounds the Silver Knight. And the Silver Knight lurches back on his horse and he starts to fall. And as he falls, he lurches forward and mortally wounds the Gold Knight. And they both fall to the ground. And they look up at the tree. And as they take their final breath, the wind blows. And the shield turns around. And the last thing each of them see is a shield that it's gold on one side and silver on the other side. So, that's a wonderful story. How does it relate to us? Now, there's two morals that we can get from this story. The Gold and the Silver Knight have fought to the death over the colour of a shield. How stupid is that? How many times in life do we fight over the trivial things and react to something that's happened like it's life and death? For example, you're watching the sport on the TV and the referee gives a decision against your team. You get so angry, you throw the remote at the TV and you yell at the screen. You get so angry and you're there yelling at an inanimate object. And what's worse, your team goes on to lose and that makes you even worse. And so you're grumpy for the rest of the day and you're angry with your wife and angry with your kids. So you've spent the whole day being angry with wife and you're angry with your kids over something that's really trivial. And a decision on it by a referee on a TV, which something you have no control over. The other things you can happen, you can be travelling along to somewhere off to work and you're driving and you're a little bit late. So you're wanting to get there, you've got a few more minutes to go and suddenly you get the red light. So what do? You shout at the red light. "How dare you go off the red? I'm late for work." So what happens? You're sitting there yelling at an inanimate object. And then you get into work and you're feeling angry and grumpy. And someone says, "Hi, how are you?" And you bark back at them. Again, you've had a life and death reaction to something that's really trivial. When you put it into focus, 5 minutes being late is not really worth life and death reaction. So what's the moral? The moral is that there's many things in life that are not life and death. In fact, 99% of things in life are not life and death. The only time that you need to react like it is life and death is when it is a life and death situation. For example, if your child's running out into the traffic, that is the time that you acted as a life and death situation, and you yell to that child to stop. Because if he doesn't stop, then he could have a life and death situation. But the reality is that happens in less than 1% of life things. So for the other 99% of things that happen in your life that are really trivial, just cool it and only react life and death when it is a life and death situation. So that's one of the morals of the story. Don't be like the silver and gold knight who fought to the death over something simple. Save that for when it is a life and death situation. The second moral of this story is about truth. Now, the gold knight and the silver knight fought over the colour of the shield. Now, from the gold knight's perspective, when he looked at the shield, it was gold. And so for him, his truth was there was a gold shield. But on the other hand, if you look at it from the silver knight's perspective, what he saw when he looked at the shield was a silver shield. So his truth for him was true. So you've got two types of truth there, which for each person was true. It was only when the wind blew at the end and the shield turned around that they saw what the real truth was, and it was something in between the gold knight's truth and the silver knight's truth. Now, if the gold knight had taken some time to say, hang on, perhaps the silver knight is seeing it from a different way, and went over to the silver knight's side and looked at the shield and saw that it in fact was silver on one side and gold on the other. And the silver knight had done the same, gone over to see where the gold knight was looking from it and seen that it was gold on one side and silver on the other. Then they would have then found the real truth, and more than likely they wouldn't have fought about it. So the moral is when you feel that you're getting into a fight about what's true for you versus what is true for someone else, it may be worth, before you get into a life and death struggle, to take some time to try and see what the other person's truth is and invite them into a place where they can see what your truth is. And you may actually find that the truth is somewhere between both of your truths, and you both learn something, and then you won't have a need to fight. Let me give you an example that happened to me. I was interviewing people at a government building, and there was lots of people in the interview room. And there was a Mr. Smith sitting in the interview room, and as the normal practice was, I would come out and call out Mr. Smith, call out your name. They would answer and we'd go and do the interview. This day I came out to see Mr. Smith, who I didn't know, and I called out, Mr. Smith, Mr. Smith. And I was about 10 metres away from Mr. Smith. And he turned around in the middle of the waiting room and he yelled at me, "Get out of my face." Well, both I was confused and everyone else in that waiting room was confused. What do you mean, get out of my face? I'm 10 metres away from you. But then I realised that his truth was that I was in his face. And I needed to acknowledge what his truth was, even though it was contrary to my truth and probably contrary to the truth of everyone else in the waiting room. So I said, I acknowledged his truth and I said to him, okay, I hear what you say. I'm going to step back and you tell me when I'm not in your face. So I stepped back 2 steps and he said, okay. I said, I'm here to interview you. Would you like to go into the interview room? And it's over there. And if you go that way and I go that way, would that be okay? And Mr. Smith said, okay. So he managed to go into the interview room and then he told me about his childhood, which was based in violence. And then I could understand why that me even being at 10 metres was a threat to him. That was his truth. Now I could have ignored his truth. And I could have approached him and said, don't be silly. And you can guess what he probably would have done, because he was quite scared that I was in his face. He would have done one of 2 things. He would have either punched me in the face because he was scared, or he would have run out of the interview. But by me acknowledging his truth and trying to see it from his side, we were able to walk through that. So again, the lesson is about truth. Before you have a life and death struggle about truth, try and see it from both people's side. So summing up the story of the gold knight and the silver knight, there's two morals that come from it. The first moral is that almost nothing is life and death in life, so it's not worth fighting like it's life and death. And the second aspect is your truth and another person's truth may be completely different, and it's worth trying to see it from the other person's side before you have a life and death struggle. I hope this is something that you use in your life, in your quest to be a healthy person. I look forward to seeing you on other videos. Cheers.